The smell of wet earth and lilies choked me, my black veil clinging damply to my face. Around me, the cemetery blurred like a watercolor gone wrong, rain falling in soft sheets that morning, erasing every sharp edge of reality. My name is Helen Carter, 64 years old, and on that day I buried my husband of 40 years, Robert Carter. Or at least that's what I thought I was doing. Robert's mahogany coffin rested before us, gleaming under the gray sky. His portrait, one I had taken years ago on his 60th birthday, smiled back at me with the warmth I no longer felt. The priest spoke of legacy, of family, of love. His words floated past me like smoke. All I could hear was the pounding of rain against the tent above us, and the pounding of my own heart. Beside me stood my two sons. David, the eldest at 38, with his jaw set tight and his arm wrapped around his wife Vanessa, and Mark, younger by 5 years, shifting impatiently, his phone vibrating in his pocket. Their faces bore the polite solemnity expected at such a ceremony, but I couldn't shake the sting of distance. Once they had clung to my skirts, begging for bedtime stories. Now they could hardly meet my eye. As the priest concluded, guests filed past, each giving me the same pitiful squeeze of the hand, the same hollow condolences. He was such a great man. You were blessed to have him. Stay strong, Helen. Blessed, strong. Words that had become chains around my throat. When the last hymn faded, I sat alone on the folding chair, staring at the coffin about to be lowered. That was when I felt it. A sharp buzz against my palm. My phone. I almost ignored it out of respect for the moment, but something urged me to look. A text message from an unknown number. My breath caught. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Helen, it's me. I'm still alive. Trust no one. The ground seemed to tilt beneath me. My chest constricted, and for a second I thought I might faint. I read it again, each word cutting into my mind like a knife. Still alive. Trust no one. The letters blurred as tears pricked my eyes. Robert. It was signed like him. His style, short, abrupt, decisive, just like the notes he used to leave on the fridge. But how could it be? I had seen the body. The hospital had called me. The death certificate had been signed. Robert had collapsed in his office, they said. A heart attack. Everything official. Everything final. And yet... My gaze darted instinctively to David and Mark. They were laughing softly with Vanessa, their shoulders hunched against the drizzle. Something twisted in my gut. Did they know? Was this a cruel prank? Or something far darker? I slipped the phone back into my pocket before anyone could notice. My pulse raced, as if I'd swallowed lightning. As the crowd dispersed, my mind flooded with the last days I had spent with Robert. He had been distant, secretive, late nights at his office, hushed phone calls I wasn't meant to overhear. When I pressed him, he'd brushed me off with a tired smile. Just business, Helen. Don't worry yourself, but I had worried. I always did. Because Robert wasn't just my husband. He was my anchor. From the moment we married, I had poured myself into our family, raising the boys, managing the household, sacrificing my own dreams so Robert could build his company, Carter and Sons Real Estate. And now, here I was, a widow, or so I thought, clutching a phone that whispered a different story. As the gravediggers began their work, lowering Robert's coffin into the ground, Vanessa approached me with her saccharine smile. "You should come stay with us for a while, Helen," she said, her manicured hand brushing my sleeve. "The house must feel so empty now. David and I would love the company." I managed a polite nod, but something about the way her eyes glinted made my stomach turn. Empty house? My home of 40 years, the place where I had cooked, loved, and cried, suddenly spoken of like a piece of property to be reallocated. Then David's voice cut in, firm, rehearsed. "Mom, we'll take care of everything." You don't have to worry about the finances. Just give me the account details and I'll handle it all. The account details. His father wasn't even in the ground yet, and already my son was talking about money. I nodded again, silent, masking the storm inside me. That night, back at the house, I sat alone in Robert's study. His leather chair still held the faint smell of his cologne, a mix of cedar and spice that once comforted me. The desk drawers were locked. They always had been. Robert had kept certain files private, even from me. I unlocked the top drawer with the small key he used to hide in his tie rack. Inside, neatly arranged folders bore names I didn't recognize. Offshore accounts, property deeds, a name scribbled on a sticky note, Vanessa. My pulse quickened. What did Robert have to do with her, beyond being her father-in-law? And why was her name in his private drawer? The phone buzzed again. Same number. Don't tell anyone you got my message. Watch them. Start with Vanessa. I froze, staring at the words until they burned into me. Vanessa, the young woman who had just offered me a place in her home, who had whispered condolences with a too sweet smile. I set the phone down slowly, my hands shaking. Outside, the rain battered the windows, relentless. If Robert was alive, then his death was a lie. And if his death was a lie, then everything, my family, my home, my life, was perched on a precipice of deception. And now I had to pretend to be the grieving widow, even as suspicion clawed at my insides. Pretend not to know that the man I loved might still be breathing somewhere, hiding from enemies I couldn't yet see. But who were the enemies? My sons? Vanessa? Or someone else? Entirely? I closed the drawer and locked it again, clutching the key in my palm until it dug into my skin. Somewhere in the house, the floor creaked. A shadow moved under the door. I wasn't alone. What would you do if you received a message like this at your husband's funeral? Would you trust your family or question everything? Let me know in the comments below. This is just the beginning of Helen's story. Don't forget to subscribe to Silent Tears Stories so you won't miss of this dramatic journey. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the old house sent my heart racing. The rain had finally stopped, but in the silence my thoughts were louder than any storm. Robert's message kept echoing in my head. Trust no one. But how could I not trust my own children? I sat in the dim glow of the lamp in the kitchen, staring at the steam rising from my untouched cup of chamomile tea. My mind wandered back to the woman I used to be, the girl who had married Robert at just 24. Back then, I had been full of dreams. I wanted to be a teacher, to inspire children the way my favorite English teacher had inspired me. But Robert was ambitious, already building his real estate business brick by brick. When David was born and then Mark 5 years later, I traded classrooms for cribs, lesson plans for laundry, lectures for late-night feedings. Robert had promised, once the boys are grown, you can go back to school. You'll have time for yourself then, but time has a way of slipping through your fingers. 1 year bled into the next, and suddenly I was in my 60s, my reflection carrying lines of exhaustion and sacrifice. I had poured everything into Robert's vision, into raising his sons, into keeping our household afloat. And what did I have now? 2 sons who barely looked at me, and a husband who might be alive but had chosen to vanish, leaving me in the dark. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the cracks had been forming long before the funeral. David had grown into Robert's mirror image, sharp, calculating, obsessed with status. He had married Vanessa, a woman who could charm a room but whose smile never reached her eyes. From the moment she joined the family, I felt like a guest in my own home. She redecorated without asking, rolled her eyes at my cooking, whispered to David when she thought I couldn't hear. Mark was different. Softer, yes, but also distant. He avoided conflict, choosing silence over loyalty. When Robert scolded me for meddling in business affairs, Mark would look away, unwilling to take my side. And Robert himself. In the last year, something had changed. He had grown paranoid. Papers were locked away, calls taken behind closed doors. Sometimes he'd leave in the middle of the night, claiming urgent meetings. Once I had woken to find him sitting in the study, his head in his hands. When I asked what was wrong, he simply said, "If anything happens to me, Helen, don't trust the obvious." At the time, I thought it was the rambling of a man exhausted by work. Now it chilled me to the bone. The morning after the funeral, I heard the sound of heels clicking against the hardwood floor. I turned from the stove to see Vanessa breezing into the kitchen, her designer coat draped casually over her shoulders. She poured herself coffee as if she owned the place. "You should think about downsizing. Helen," she said, her tone honey-sweet. "This house is too big for you alone. David and I could help you manage the sale. You'd be comfortable. I promise." I gripped the edge of the counter so tightly, my knuckles went white. "This is my home," I said evenly. Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Of course. I just think it's what Robert would have wanted. He always said this place was more of a burden than a blessing." I wanted to scream, to tell her that Robert had built this house with his own 2 hands, that every corner held memories of our life together. But instead, I swallowed the words, storing them like stones in my chest, because Robert's message echoed again in my mind. Watch them. Start with Vanessa. Later that afternoon, I wandered into the garden, hoping fresh air would clear my thoughts. But instead of peace, I found another puzzle. Near the rose bushes, half buried under the damp soil, was a crumpled piece of paper. I picked it up, brushing off the dirt. It was part of a printed email, the ink smudged from rain. Finalized transfer of assets. Ensure Helen is not informed. Signed V. My stomach twisted. V. Vanessa. Before I could process, the gate creaked open. Mark stepped in, carrying groceries. He looked surprised to see me holding the paper, his eyes darting nervously. "What's that?" he asked. I shoved it into my pocket. Nothing. Just trash. He hesitated, then gave a small nod, as if he didn't quite believe me but didn't want to press. That was the thing about Mark. He lived in the shadows of confrontation. But sometimes silence speaks louder than words. That evening, as I sat by the fireplace with Robert's old blanket wrapped around me, my phone buzzed once more. "They will come for the house. Don't sign anything. Keep the deed safe." I stared at the message until my eyes blurred. Robert was alive. He knew Vanessa's intentions. He knew about the house. But if he was alive, why hadn't he come back to me? Why hide behind cryptic messages, leaving me to face our family's betrayal alone? I pressed the phone to my chest, torn between fury and fear. Just as I was about to head upstairs for the night, headlights swept across the living room window. A car pulled into the driveway. Through the glass, I saw David step out, his expression hard, Vanessa trailing behind him, with a folder tucked under her arm. Something told me this wasn't a casual visit. And for the first time in my life, I locked the door against my own son. Would you have confronted Vanessa about the paper in the garden, or kept it hidden like Helen? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to Silent Tears Stories and stay with Helen, because the truth begins to surface, and the family's darkest secrets edge closer to the light. The knock on the door was sharp, almost impatient. Through the lace curtains, I could see David standing tall in his expensive suit, Vanessa beside him with that folder clutched like a prize. I hesitated before unlocking the door. My heart pounded in my chest. Robert's warning rang in my ears. "Don't sign anything." When I finally opened, David didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mom, we need to talk." Vanessa slipped past me into the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She set the folder on the coffee table, smiling as if we were discussing family photos instead of business. David cleared his throat. It's about the estate. Dad had a lot of unfinished matters, and it's important we handle them quickly. Vanessa's already spoken with the lawyers. We just need your signature on a few documents. Vanessa slid the folder across the table toward me. Inside were neatly typed pages, full of legal jargon. I caught glimpses of words: transfer, authorization, beneficiary. My stomach turned. I don't understand, I said carefully. Why are you in such a hurry? Your father hasn't even been gone a week. Vanessa's tone was sugar-coated but sharp underneath. Helen, grief can cloud judgment. These matters are better handled now before complications arise. You wouldn't want to risk the house, would you? The house, always the house. I remembered the first night Robert and I moved in. The walls were bare, the air filled with paint and possibility. He had wrapped me in his arms and whispered, "This house will be our legacy, Helen." A place no one can take from us. And now, here was Vanessa, trying to strip that legacy away with a signature. I pushed the folder back across the table. I won't sign anything until I've had time to read it properly. Alone. With a lawyer, David's jaw tightened. You don't need a lawyer. We're family. My lips trembled, but I held my ground. Family doesn't rush me in the middle of mourning. For a moment, silence filled the room, thick and heavy. Then Vanessa let out a soft laugh, as if amused by a child's stubbornness. Of course, Helen. Take your time, she said, her eyes glittering with something colder than kindness. But don't wait too long. Delays can be costly. After they left, I knew I had to protect what mattered most. Robert's last message had been clear. Keep the deed safe. I climbed the narrow staircase to our bedroom and pulled down the old fireproof lockbox we kept hidden in the closet. My hands shook as I turned the key. Inside, nestled among birth certificates and marriage papers, was the deed to the house. It was in both our names, Robert's and mine, not David's, not Mark's, not Vanessa's. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. Because if Robert was still alive, why hadn't he taken this with him? Why leave me to guard it? The next evening, Mark stopped by. Unlike his brother, he didn't barge in. He lingered at the doorway, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. "Mom, I need to ask you something," he said, his voice low. Did he leave you anything unusual? Papers, instructions, anything?" I studied him carefully. His eyes looked tired, haunted even, but not calculating like David's. "What makes you ask?" I said cautiously. He hesitated, then leaned closer. "Because David and Vanessa, they're hiding something. I overheard them talking about offshore accounts, about money Dad moved without telling anyone. They said you don't need to know, my blood ran cold. Offshore accounts, the papers in Robert's locked drawer. I wanted to trust Mark. I really did. But Robert's warning clawed at my chest. Trust no one. So I shook my head. No, Mark. I don't know anything. The lie tasted bitter, but necessary. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the garden. The moonlight cast long shadows across the roses. I knelt by the bush where I had found Vanessa's paper the day before, my fingers brushing the soil. Another scrap of paper caught my eye. This one was smaller, torn, with just a few words legible. Meeting arranged. If she resists, pressure her. I pressed it to my chest, shivering. The words weren't just about money anymore, they were about me. Back inside, the phone lit up on the nightstand. Same number. You're in danger. They want control of everything. Don't let them see the deed. My hands trembled. I wanted to scream into the empty house. Where are you, Robert? Why won't you come back? but the only reply was silence. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of voices in the driveway. I peeked through the curtain and froze. David's car, Vanessa's laugh, and Mark's voice, joining theirs. The three of them, standing together, huddled like conspirators. For the first time, I wondered, was Mark truly different, or had I just fooled myself into believing he was? If you were Helen, would you hide the deed or confront your children directly? Comment below with what you'd do. Don't miss part 4 of Helen's story, because the betrayal is about to cut deeper than she ever imagined. From the upstairs window, I watched them, David, Vanessa, and Mark, leaning in close, their voices hushed, their heads nodding. A knot formed in my stomach. My boys, the flesh of my flesh, standing with the woman who wanted to take everything from me. When they finally dispersed, I sank into Robert's old chair in the study. The leather creaked under my weight, a sound so familiar it almost broke me. I wanted to believe Mark was different, but maybe Robert had been right. Maybe I truly couldn't trust anyone. The phone buzzed again. My pulse raced as I reached for it. Helen. Check the second drawer. Behind the false panel, my breath caught. Second drawer. False panel. I pulled the desk drawer open. It looked empty, only pens and a broken watch. But when I ran my fingers along the back, I felt it. A seam. My hands trembled as I pressed, and the panel gave way. Inside was a slim envelope. My name was written on the front in Robert's unmistakable scrawl. With shaking hands, I opened it. Inside was a single page. Helen, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I've uncovered fraud within the company. Money siphoned, assets moved offshore. David and Vanessa are at the center of it. Mark, I don't know where his loyalties lie. If I disappear, trust only what I've left in your hands. The deed, the accounts in Switzerland. Keep them safe. They'll come for you. Stay strong. I will find a way back. The room spun. Fraud. Switzerland. My own son involved. I pressed the paper to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Robert wasn't just hiding. He was fighting, and he had left me as his shield. Before I could gather my thoughts, the doorbell rang. Startled, I stuffed the letter back into the panel and wiped my face. It was Mark. Alone this time, his expression pale and tense. "Mom, we need to talk," he said. I hesitated. His voice trembled, not with authority like David's, but with fear. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He paced the living room, running his hands through his hair. "I know you don't trust me, but I swear to you, I'm not with them. They've dragged me into things I don't want to be a part of. Offshore accounts, fake signatures. Dad found out. That's why—" He broke off, swallowing hard. "That's why he's gone." My knees weakened. "Are you saying your father is alive?" Mark froze, eyes darting to mine. "You've heard from him, haven't you?" My silence was answer enough. Mark sank into the couch, burying his face in his hands. They planned to stage everything, make it look like a heart attack, cover their tracks before the authorities could catch on. But Dad was one step ahead. He vanished. "I think he sent you something, didn't he? A message?" I wanted to deny it, but the words slipped out. "Yes." His head snapped up. Relief and desperation flickered across his face. "Then we still have a chance. Mom, you have to protect the deed and the Swiss account details. They're our only leverage." The word unsettled me. That night, I received an invitation, hand-delivered, elegant script across thick cardstock. Dinner at David and Vanessa's home. Family only. To discuss next steps, it was signed by Vanessa. The words "family only" felt like a dagger. She was weaving herself deeper into the heart of the Carters, as if she were the rightful heir. I didn't want to go. Every instinct screamed trap, but Robert's note echoed in my mind, "They'll come for you. Stay strong." If I didn't go, I would look guilty. If I did, I might walk straight into the lion's den. Their house was immaculate, coldly beautiful, every detail curated to impress. A long mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier, candles flickering. Vanessa greeted me at the door with a kiss on the cheek, her perfume sharp and suffocating. David poured wine, insisting I drink. I refused, keeping my hands clasped tightly in my lap. As we ate, the conversation circled the same topic: the house, the assets, the future. They spoke as if Robert had never existed, as if I were merely an obstacle to be managed. At one point, Vanessa leaned forward, her smile razor thin. "Helen, surely you understand. It's better for everyone if the property is in David's name. You'll still live comfortably, of course. But this house, it's wasted on you." Her words sliced through me. Wasted. As if 40 years of sacrifice, of making that house a home, meant nothing. I set my fork down, my voice steady but cold. "I will not sign anything." The air grew thick. David's jaw tightened. Vanessa's smile didn't falter, but her eyes burned with fury. Later that night, back home, I found another message waiting on my phone. "You were right not to sign. They'll try harder next time. Don't eat or drink what they offer. Trust only what you see with your own eyes." My hands trembled. He had been watching. Somehow, Robert knew. The next morning, I stepped out to fetch the mail. An envelope lay on the porch. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single photograph. Robert, alive. Standing on a street I didn't recognize. His face gaunt, eyes shadowed, but unmistakably him. On the back, scrawled in hurried writing, "They know where I am. Don't let them find me." If you were Helen, would you keep Robert's survival a secret or reveal it to Mark? Subscribe to Silent Tears Stories because the betrayal will reach its breaking point, and Helen will have to decide who deserves her trust and who deserves her wrath. The photograph haunted me. Robert alive, but hunted. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his gaunt face, his warning. I could no longer wait passively. My family's betrayal had turned from whispers into claws, and now I had the weapon Robert entrusted to me. The deed, the accounts, the letter. The next confrontation would come soon. I could feel it. It arrived in the form of an invitation, though summons felt more accurate. This time, it wasn't a polite dinner. It was a legal meeting, arranged at the old Carter offices downtown, the building Robert had poured his life into. David's message was curt. "Be there at 10 a.m. We'll settle this." Settle. The word tasted like poison. I wore black, not for mourning, but for armor. As I entered the boardroom, I found them waiting. David at the head, Vanessa by his side like a queen, Mark shifting uneasily in the corner. 2 lawyers sat with folders piled high, eyes sharp. "Mother," David said, his tone dripping with feigned respect, "we've reviewed the estate. For the good of the family, we need your signature today." "For the good of the family," I repeated softly, then raised my eyes to his. "Or for the good of you." Before they could respond, the door opened. Elliot Parker, the investigator I'd secretly contacted days before, strode in. He carried a small projector under his arm. David shot to his feet. "What is this? Who invited—" "I did," I interrupted. My voice rang stronger than I'd ever heard it. "If we are to speak of family, let's speak of the truth." Elliot set up the projector, the screen glowing against the pale wall. He pressed play. Grainy footage appeared. Mark, nervous at a hardware store counter, purchasing methanol. His voice, shaky but clear, "My dad won't bother us anymore." The room froze. Mark buried his face in his hands. "I didn't mean—" It wasn't, I was following orders. Vanessa's composure cracked. Her hand clenched David's arm, nails digging in. And then came the second clip. Robert himself, gaunt but alive, speaking directly to the camera. If you are seeing this, Helen, it means I was right. Our sons, or those around them, are conspiring against us. Don't trust their smiles. Protect what is ours. The deed is yours. The accounts are yours. Fight. My heart lurched, but my face stayed firm. I had waited for this moment. David exploded, slamming his fist against the table. This is manipulation. Mother, he's delusional. You can't believe. Enough. My voice cut sharper than I imagined possible. You stood at your father's bedside, whispering about insurance money while he still breathed. You let Vanessa treat him like refuse, and now you dare call him delusional. The silence was suffocating. Even the lawyers looked unsettled. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope Robert had left me. You wanted my signature? I slid the deed across the table. Read it carefully. David's hands trembled as he unfolded it. His face drained of color. Because the deed, notarized years ago, listed me as the sole owner of the Carter home, with survivorship rights that bypassed any claim they thought they had. This villa, I said, rising to my feet, voice ringing with finality. It's mine. And you are trespassing? Vanessa leapt up, her composure gone. You old fool! Do you think anyone will believe you? Without us, you're nothing. I stepped closer, looking her dead in the eye. Without love, without respect, without integrity, you are nothing. And soon the law will see it the same way. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Mark sobbed quietly in the corner, the weight of guilt crushing him. For once, David had no argument, no mask, just silence. Elliot gathered the files. We'll be handing this over to Detective Harris. Fraud, attempted poisoning, conspiracy to defraud. It won't take long. The boardroom felt suddenly smaller, the walls closing in on them. As I walked out into the sunlight, the air felt different, lighter. For the first time since the funeral, I could breathe. Robert's words echoed in my mind. Stay strong. I will find a way back. He was alive, and I had just torn apart the net they tried to cast around me. But I knew the story wasn't over. David and Vanessa would fight, perhaps harder than before, yet something inside me had shifted. I was no longer the grieving widow, trembling in the shadows. I was Helen Carter, wife, mother, survivor, and the keeper of the truth. That night, as I locked the front door, an envelope slid under it. My stomach dropped as I picked it up. Inside was a single line written in Robert's scrawl. Helen, they're closer than you think. Don't let them win. The battle wasn't finished. It was only beginning. If you were Helen, would you forgive Mark for his part or cut him out forever? Subscribe to Silent Tear Stories and stay tuned for the final part, where justice, betrayal, and family ties collide in the ultimate reckoning. Don't forget to comment below. Have you ever seen greed tear a family apart?